You are lying in the dark. The room is silent. And then you hear it. That thin, high whine, circling somewhere near your ear. You freeze. You wait. For something so small you can barely see it, a mosquito has total control of the moment. Now, imagine that sound is gone. Not just tonight, but everywhere, forever. Every mosquito on Earth, all at once, simply erased. It sounds like a dream. For most of human history, it would have been the answer to a prayer. No animal has killed more human beings than the mosquito. Not the lion, not the shark, not even other humans. By most estimates, mosquito-borne disease has helped kill nearly half of all the people who have ever lived. So the question seems easy. If you could press a button and wipe them out, why would you ever hesitate? Stay with that question, because the answer is far stranger than you think. First, let's be honest about the enemy. There are more than 3,500 species of mosquito, only a few hundred bite humans, and only a few dozen carry the diseases that matter: malaria, dengue, yellow fever, Zika, West Nile. The World Health Organization estimates malaria alone still kills well over 500,000 people every single year, most of them young children in sub-Saharan Africa. So when scientists imagine erasing mosquitoes, they are not being cruel. They are trying to imagine the largest public health rescue in history. In 2010, the journal Nature published a now-famous feature by the science writer Janet Fang, titled simply, "A World Without Mosquitoes." Fang did something unusual. Instead of asking whether we could destroy them, she asked the harder question. If we did, what exactly would break? She interviewed entomologists, ecologists, and disease researchers around the world, and their answers did not line up the way you might expect. So let's reconstruct the world you would actually be left with. Picture the Arctic tundra in the brief, frantic warmth of summer. The ground thaws into shallow pools of standing water, and from those pools rises something almost biblical. Mosquitoes hatch in numbers so vast they form dark, shifting clouds you can see from a distance. Scientists studying the far north have described swarms thick enough to suffocate and drain animals through sheer volume. Caribou, the great migrating deer of the Arctic, change where they walk to escape them. They climb to windier, cooler ground. They move toward the coast. Their entire migration route bends around the misery of these insects. Now ask yourself a quiet question. If the caribou move, what moves with them? Their hooves churn the soil. Their grazing shapes which plants grow. The wolves that follow them shift too. The birds that nest in their wake. The plants fertilized by their dung. The rivers crossed by the herd. All of it traces back, in part, to a cloud of insects telling the caribou where not to go. Remove the mosquito, and you have quietly removed one of the hands shaping an entire landscape. But the swarms are only the beginning. To understand what mosquitoes really are in nature, you have to look at where they spend most of their lives, and it is not in the air. A mosquito spends the majority of its life underwater. Before it ever grows wings, it is a larva, a tiny wriggling thing hanging just beneath the surface of a pond, a puddle, a water-filled hole in a tree. There, it does something genuinely important. It filters the water. It eats algae, microbes, and rotting bits of organic material, and in doing so, it recycles nutrients and becomes living food itself. Fish eat the larvae. Frogs eat the larvae. Salamanders, dragonfly nymphs, and beetles eat the larvae by the thousands. This is where the simple story falls apart. Phil Lunabos, a mosquito ecologist who spent his career at the Florida Medical Entomology Laboratory, spent years asking whether anything truly depends on mosquitoes. His conclusion was cautious but revealing. In most ecosystems, he argued, other insects would probably rush in to fill the gap. Midges, for example, breed in the same waters and could feed the same fish. Nature, he suggested, would patch the wound. And yet, he admitted, certain specialists might fall. Some fish, like the aptly named mosquito fish, are built around eating mosquito larvae. Some plants are pollinated in part, by adult mosquitoes. Here is a fact that surprises almost everyone. Most adult mosquitoes do not drink blood at all. Only the females do, and only because they need the protein to make eggs. The rest of the time, both males and females feed on nectar. That means a mosquito is a pollinator. In the far north, one orchid in particular, the blunt-leaved bog orchid, relies heavily on mosquitoes to carry its pollen. Remove the mosquito, and a flower that has bloomed for thousands of years may have no one left to visit it. It is a small loss, but it is a thread, and ecosystems are made of threads. So now you are standing at the real heart of the question, and it splits into two answers that refuse to agree. The ecological answer is messy. Most scientists, when pressed, believe the planet would survive without mosquitoes. The gaps would mostly close. Other insects would multiply. Birds and bats and fish would adjust their menus. David Quammen, the science writer who has spent decades chronicling how diseases jump between species, has pointed out that the mosquito's true ecological role is oddly modest for something so infamous. It is everywhere, but few things depend on it alone. The human answer is not messy at all. It is staggering. Imagine the disease is gone. Imagine no child dying of malaria tonight. Imagine entire regions of the world, long held back by the constant drain of illness, suddenly free to grow, to farm, to build, to thrive. Some economists have argued that malaria has shaped the wealth and poverty of whole nations for centuries. Erase the mosquito, and you may erase one of the oldest invisible weights on human history. This is the twist that makes the question so hard. The case against mosquitoes is not really an ecological case. It is a human one, and the two are not the same. Here is where it gets even more uncomfortable. We may not have to imagine anymore. Scientists today can do something that would have sounded like fantasy a generation ago. Using a tool called a gene drive, researchers can engineer a mosquito to pass on a chosen trait to nearly all of its offspring, breaking the normal coin flip of inheritance. In theory, you could release a few engineered mosquitoes and watch a gene spread through a wild population until that population collapses. The medical entomologist Bart Knowles and many others have spent years studying how and whether this should ever be done. Notice what that means. The button in this story is no longer hypothetical. It is closer to a switch we may actually be able to flip. And the people studying it are not asking only, can we? They are asking, which species and what happens next? Because here is the thing about pulling a thread. You cannot always see what it was holding up until it is already falling. So let's return to that dark room, the whine near your ear. For a moment, let it mean something different. That sound is one of the oldest sounds on Earth. Mosquitoes have existed for over 100 million years. They drank from dinosaurs. They have outlasted ice ages, asteroids, and every empire humans have ever built. They are not an accident of nature. They are one of its most successful designs. That does not make them innocent. They remain, by the numbers, the deadliest animal you will ever meet. If we ever do erase the species that carry disease, it may save more human lives than almost anything else we have ever done. But notice the careful word the scientists keep using. Not mosquitoes, the species, a few dozen out of thousands. Even the people who most want them gone are trying to remove a scalpel's worth, not a sledgehammer's. Maybe that is the real lesson hiding inside something so small. The world is not made of villains and heroes. It is made of connections, most of them invisible, until you reach to cut one. The mosquito is proof that a creature can be both a killer and a thread in the same web, and that the wisest question is rarely, should this thing exist? It is, what am I truly removing, and what is it holding? You are lying in the dark. The room is silent, and then you hear it, that thin, high whine circling near your ear. Listen a little longer this time, because that tiny, infuriating sound is one of the great unfinished questions of life on Earth, and for the first time in history, the answer might actually be up to you.